Welcome back to the Mobalytics 9.19 update and Q&A video. I'm your challenger coach, Adam Moriarty Isles, here to take you through all the changes and questions you had. As a disclaimer, I'd like to mention that we only update the normal list as of right now, as the High-ELO one wouldn't really have a big enough data set to make an update worthwhile at this point in time. So without any more delays, let's jump right into the update. Starting off on the normal list, our S-tier roster is Garen, Nasus, Jax, Teemo, Yorick, Urgot, Alawi, Mordekaiser, Kayle, Singed, Kled, and one of the strongest champions on this patch, Heimerdinger. This patch, Heimer received what most people would consider a minor buff initially. Though we predicted him to come back into the meta due to how melee heavy it is, we did not expect him to jump all the way to S tier, going from a 49.85% win rate on patch 9.18 to a 53.29% on 9.19, causing him to go from B tier to S tier instantly. The literal big brain champion has come back stronger than ever, having almost no losing matchups in top lane, being able to bully short range champions with ease. Honestly, if I had to recommend one champion for this patch to pick up, it would definitely be Heimer, because spoiler alert, he's S tier in 2 other roles as well. Next up, we got Ornn, who also received a minor buff to his passive, allowing him to forge items level 12 instead of 13, and since he was very close to B tier already, we bumped him up as he's doing pretty well in the patch. This has also sparked a renaissance of sorts for Ornn experimentation, where you're seeing even pro players try him out in the jungle and as support, as he might be a valuable flex pick for Worlds, who knows? And lastly, I'd like to talk about the lack of change in the rank of Fiora for the normal list, as it was a common question I had to answer in the YouTube comments over and over and over again. Fiora on patch 9.18 had a 50.01% win rate and a 6.9% play rate, but on 9.19 she went up to, holy 50.32% win rate and a 9.9% play rate? Clearly S tier broken champion. Or not. The reason for this is that though her buff seemed insane at first glance, even I'll admit I messaged Prohibited like, dude, you have to play Fiora, she's broken when I first saw them, because I thought she'd be OP, but because those buffs only help her in winning matchups, since that's the only time she's going to be consistently hitting towers, then it wouldn't help her underlying problem of not having too many of those in the first place currently. That's the reason we didn't move her up. It's kind of like buffing Kassadin versus Katarina. He doesn't need help winning that matchup, just like how Fiora doesn't need help beating the matchups he already is going to win. Moving over to the jungle, our S tier roster for the normal list will be Vi, Amumu, Volibear, Nocturne, Dr. Mundo, Jax, Master Yeezus, Nunu, Echo, and new addition Zac. Yet another tank jungler is being added to S tier, with Zac coming up from A tier thanks mostly due to the buffs to his blob healing. He currently holds a 53% win rate, which is up from 51.15 on patch 9.18. It would appear that Zac has reached his final form, and he's got a lot of extra survivability, so he's able to more consistently engage during the mid to late game without dying. Similar to Dr. Mundo, if you don't buy healing reduction versus him, you kind of auto-lose team fights during that phase, but even if you do, the amount of healing being reduced isn't enough to kill him most of the time. If you're looking to pick up Zac, avoid the Echo and Mundo matchups in the jungle, and just don't pick him into Janna, and you should be perfectly fine. That makes our only other change being to Kindred getting shout around and taking off of B tier, as she is currently not providing enough damage and reliable snowball potential in the early game to really do well in this meta. For the mid lane normal list, our starting S tier roster will be Malzahar, Lux, Diana, Vel'Koz, Ahri, Swain, Fizz, Mordekaiser, Echo, and once again, Heimerdinger. I'm not going to spend too much time on Heimer, other than mentioning that he may have been overbuffed in a meta that suits him very well as an anti-melee assassin champion, so he moves from A tier to S tier. Speaking of melee assassin mids, Talon has finally made it onto the normal list after being S tier on the High-ELO one for such a long time. This is mainly due to how if you master Talon in the current meta, you should be able to climb extremely well and reach your goal by the end of the season. As for A tier changes, the control mage duo Orianna and Cassiopeia will be moving down to B tier. Medusa and Robot Girl, despite being strong staple champions in the mid lane and will likely see play at Worlds, they just aren't as reliable in solo queue at the moment. This is due to not having strong roaming, strong gank protection, and team comp wise they very much prefer to play with at least frontline champion, and no, an off-roll Thrasher Blitz player doesn't count as frontline to me, alright? So if they don't get a good team comp or the match ends up in a skirmish heavy early game, they can't scale, and before their team tilts, they're just not going to be able to do anything, making it more efficient to pick safer, more consistent control mages like Anivia or Malzahar who can more easily delay games and stay safe from ganks. Annie is another champion who, despite her buffs, is going to move down from A tier to B tier. It appears that for now, the movement speed on her E provided a decent buff of around 1% win rate, but it wasn't enough to make her go to A tier. Unless Riot continues to buff her numbers like they did for Echo, so, maybe that might happen. Now to the bot lane normalist S tier roster, we got Jinx, Misfortune, Ashe, Jhin, Caitlyn, Draven, Yasuo, and once again, Heimerdinger. With how strong Heimer is in both mid and top due to the melee heavy or short range champion meta, despite his low play rate in bot lane, we are extremely confident he is S-tier down here as well. His win rate is 54.78%, but he only has a 0.3% play rate so far. But he should suit the meta in bot lane quite well, as the most popular supports at the moment are Blitz, Pyke, Thresh, and Nautilus, which all have hooks that will be blocked by his turret. He also pairs up quite well with supports like Brand Zyra or engaged supports like Leona Nautilus, as these combos can easily CC chain on one rotation the enemy bot laners down, so definitely look to pick up Heimerdinger. Next up, our other addition to S-tier will be Ashe, who received another seemingly minor buff to her move speed slow early game, while also getting an auto reset on her Q, which turned out to have a monstrous impact on her win rate. She went from a 51.14% win rate on 9.18 to a 53.34 on 9.19, which is insane, along with her 16.7% pick rate, making her by far one of the strongest marksmen on this patch. The buffs made her laning phase far more oppressive, allowing her to have more lane priority so she can use her utility to impact skirmishes more frequently. A quick tip for playing her is take approach velocity in the inspiration tree. It makes it incredibly easy to chase people down in the early game with your new extra slow and space properly with your long range, so try it out and let me know how it goes in the comment section below. And now we have the support S-tier roster for the normal list, which is Brand, Soraka, Nautilus, Janna, Nami, Swain, and Blitzcrank. So, funny enough, the story of the support role this patch is that almost every single support took a win rate hit besides Blitzcrank. He is quite legitimately so strong that he tanked the win rates of every other champion around him, especially the Enchanter class. The buff he got to his hook is throwing everyone off, just because they're too accustomed to dodging his hook from the old range, allowing him to make crazy new hook spots, ultimately tilting the enemy team and not only grabbing their life away from them, but also their LP. Currently, you need either to pick Blitzcrank or ban it, because even if you counterpick it with like Morg or Leona or something like that, it doesn't seem to matter, since your carries will get hooked in the mid game anyways. The champ that took the biggest hit from the rise of the robot is Sona, so we moved her from A tier to B tier, as not only does she struggle versus Blitz, but also the other hook champions and Leona, so she's just not looking very good matchup wise during this meta. Our first question for the Q&A portion is from Hiltcow on YouTube, who asked, I noticed that you changed Bard's skill floor from severe to hard. Just curious what instigated this change. This is actually something we've been tracking for a while. The average champs in the severe category do pretty poorly on the normal list, as they require a lot of mastery to even reach a 50% win rate like a Kali or Aurelia, for example. Bard, though, has been performing well in the normal list for quite some time, so it made us rethink how difficult he really might be. We then discussed if he was actually performing at lower levels due to him being too strong, or if he was actually just easier to execute than we initially thought. We understand that he can be pretty troll with portals, missed stuns, or ulting people at the wrong time, but apparently with just autos and landing Q, he provides quite a bit of pressure for his team, especially now that he's tankier in the early game compared to past versions. We eventually decided to move him to hard difficulty to better match his mastery to LP ratio. Our next question is also on YouTube from Salal, who asked, isn't the point of S-tier the fact that champs you find it in are godlike or OP? Because I got serious doubts when I see more than 10 champions in S-tier. Nasus S-tier question mark? Even the lower level list probably shouldn't have them in S-tier. Now, this is actually something I personally brought up during our tier list meeting recently, as I too thought it might be a little weird to have so many S-tier champions, and we should potentially be a little stricter on who we let in. But the core principle of this tier list is to help you climb, and if a role has 10 S-tier champions, then all that means is that that role has a large difference between its top end and its lower end, or that role itself is just very strong currently in solo queue. This kind of information I feel is really important to display to the viewers rather than arbitrarily limiting S-tier like we did in the past, as it feels like the integrity of the list gets hurt when you do that, as you're not being genuine on how strong things are. As for Nasus specifically, you are right to be a little skeptical, as he's at the very bottom of S-tier and is almost about to fall out, but he currently still outperforms all the other A-tier champions, so we're keeping him there for now. Our next question comes from Tsunami World on Discord, who added me specifically and said, hi Moriarty, please tell me why Volibear is an S-tier. I've been seeing him there for a long time, but it's not entirely clear why. Don't worry, I got you. Currently, the jungle is in a very early game and skirmish heavy meta, which is something Volibear thrives in, as he is both tanky due to his passive early game and provides a lot of damage while being very easy to execute and clear with. At lower levels of play, this kind of reliability is extremely valuable, and his passive often catches people off guard, allowing him to snowball even more consistently in the early game. Don't get me wrong, Volibear is not some god tier champion, otherwise we'd have him at the High-ELO list as well. Think of him like the Garen of the jungle, consistently manly champion that is good for climbing at lower levels of play due to his ease of execution and consistency in an early game meta. But if it ends up being a late game meta at any point in time, you better believe we're replacing him faster than TSM would replace their jungler. Our first Facebook question comes from Julian, who asked, why is Leona only A tier? She tanks pretty well, synergizes well with a lot of AD carries early on, and has a short CD on her ultimate. And Leona has been rising in popularity for some time now and is a very solid A tier champion, but what stops her from reaching S tier is something I mention a lot, but it's consistency. Leona as a champion is very linear, and she can only really go in. Now, the reason this is important is that if she falls behind or her team falls behind, she can no longer engage and runs out of any option. She just runs around in circles doing nothing. Might as well be Yuumi at that point. Though this concept is true of many pick champions such as Blitzcrank or Nautilus, they can at least look for picks from a safe distance, or in Naut's case, he can use his Q for mobility to get out once he engages. Leona, on the other hand, will engage, look for a pick, realize it won't work, then waddle away slowed or stunned and just die as the rest of her team spam pinks her for doing a dumb engage. To overcome her current kit limitations to be consistent enough in solo queue to reach S tier, she'd either need to be so tanky it doesn't matter when she engages, or her CDs need to be so low that she is spam CCing better than any other support in the game. Our last question comes from David on Instagram, who asked, why is Nocturne so high compared to others, like Kha'Zix for example? This is a good question, and it comes up pretty frequently for our normal list. Nocturne currently has a very consistent, easy to execute kit, and thanks to the buffs he received a couple of patches ago, has become quite a strong duelist in the early game, and he can even use his quick clear speed to farm till 6 for some free kills, making him a pretty ideal jungler for the normal list, which is why we have him placed in S tier. But why is Ka not also S tier on the normal list, as he is considered by most to be OP and is S tier on our High-ELO list? Well, that's because if you scan the jungle list, you'll note how consistent performing tank or bruiser champs dominate the current jungle meta, as they are easy to snowball on, farm on, and scale well, or are even useful from behind. Assassin junglers, on the other hand, like Kha'Zix, have almost none of those qualities. They aren't consistent, they require you to snowball, and they require you to end games before they get outscaled in the teamfight phase, which is why COD players need excellent knowledge on how to get picks and how to consistently end games. This means if you don't have that skill level required to snowball consistently and close out those games, your win rate is going to be awful on assassin junglers, hence why they don't do well on the normal list compared to the High-ELO one. It's more so if you had to ask yourself, like, would you want a first-time Kha'Zix or a first-time Amumu jungling for you in your games? I'd probably take Amumu. At the very least, even if they suck, Amumu might accidentally CC someone, and at the end of the day, if both of them do nothing and use no abilities and just get hit, the Amumu's got more HP, so I'd still take him. Thanks for watching our tier list update and Q&A video for patch 9.19, and as always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below, or go to our Discord server in the link provided where you can ping me in our tier list discussion channel. Don't forget to try out Mobalytics today at mobalytics.gg, and I'll see you summoners out on the Rift.